Religion is
Introduction. The topic of our group was religious practices in Japan. We chose religious practices in Japan because we were interested in analyzing the most commonly practiced religion in Japan and compare the social and cultural norms built from those beliefs, how they came about, and how they differ from the religious norms in America, and how those religious practices might affect their everyday lives. Why? We found this topic interesting because for a lot of us, this is our first time being able to speak to people who are currently living across the world and getting a real chance to sit and ask them questions about anything. We came in knowing that they practice different religions than we did, and had different beliefs. But it was interesting for us to hear firsthand from someone a part of that culture. It was pretty cool to hear the students speak on religious cultures over there and how they are different from the things we believe in our culture.
Background knowledge. The word Shinto, which means the way of calm, generally scarce or divine power, specifically the varieties of gods. Japanese beliefs from Buddhism, which was introduced in Japan for the 6th century. Shinto doesn't have a founder. It has preserved its guiding beliefs throughout ages. In the beginnings of the 18th century, Shinto was received as one of the most important national religions throughout the writings and teachings. I've learned that Shinto has many beliefs with the importance of purity, harmony, and the respect of nature, family respect, and subordination of individuals. In 2019, the number of religious adherents affirmative with Shintoism in Japan amounted to close to 89 million people. This marked a decrease of Shintoists compared to around 102.8 million people in 2010.
All right. Our research was aimed to analyze the most commonly practiced religions in Japan and compare the social and cultural norms built from those beliefs, how they came about, how they differ from the religious norms in North American culture. Our questions were aimed to understand the reality of religious practices in Japan based on the experiences of our fellow Japanese collaborators. Our questions were, what are the most commonly practiced religions in Japan? What do your beliefs consist of? How do you practice at a temple or shrines, holy books, etc.? What the background and history of the Shinto belief? What issues occur with the practices of religion in Japan? How does the most commonly religions affect political, social, and gender aspects of Japan? In what ways have the Shinto practices shaped gender roles in Japan? And lastly, in America, the most commonly practiced religions are Christianity and Islam. There is no theocracy in America, so the separation of church and state is an important value to hold to ensure equality and religious freedom. How does the practice of religion and politics differ in America than in Japan? Because there have been historical issues with separating beliefs like Abrahamic laws, such as ban on same-sex marriages, and more recently, abortion laws. We chose these questions because we felt like they could give a general insight to the realities of the relationship between Japan's society and the commonly practiced beliefs. To better understand if society or politics in Japan have been shaped by the religious beliefs held there, with any comparison to what we experience in America.
Data analysis. How Shinto is being used, taught, and worshipped in from the JP personal experiences. The majority of the answers from the students in Japan showed that there is not only religion practiced the way we may understand or operate in America. However, there's a presence of Buddhism and Shinto practices such as visiting a shrine, mostly on New Year's Day, to make which is our special gratitude. Overall, it may seem ceremonial processes are not done, but are not religious. The JP students answer the questions very thoroughly informative. Even though some can answer the questions, they still give a great definition of what Shinto and how it was used. Some students never really heard of it.
It was very common in almost every answer that our Japanese collaborators are not personally religious and and an overwhelming amount of non-religious people in Japan. Our research did not greatly support the answers they gave, which is a shock, but not completely surprising. Their answers reflected realistic and randomized sample that is accurate. Meanwhile, the internet might not give someone accurate answers. The internet did not seem to convey the culture or daily aspect of the way religion is viewed in Japan as a whole. The perspectives are likely different due to the fact that because we are not living in Japan, we do not necessarily fully comprehend the importance or scale religion has in Japan. According to our interview questions, Japan has a separation of church and state and are compliant by those values, unlike America. We were raised and conditioned in the likeness of American culture, which is not strict against religious beliefs, like Christianity being optional to partake in. Meanwhile, in America, we are allowed to partake or not partake in any belief system. But America was built on certain traditional religious values that are still owed to an extinct.
Findings. Our findings show that we were most presumptuous and ignorant to the religious culture in Japan. Our research showed that Buddhism and Shinto are the most commonly practiced religion. However, our interviewees' responses show that they are practiced to an extent and that the way religion is practiced and viewed in Japan is not exact to how religion is practiced in America.
Application and reflection. Working with the Japan students was a different but great learning experience. We were able to openly ask them questions about religion in Japan and receive answers the internet would have not been able to give us. We learned so many things from the Japan students. Our main goal was to find out more about how religion was practiced in Japan so we could compare them to the way religion was practiced in America, and we did just that. We learned that despite the internet telling us they mainly practice Shinto and Buddhism, however, many of the Japanese students said they're not exactly religious and only tend to do things pertaining to the religion on holidays. In the future, my peers and I will always to do more in-depth research when it comes to teaching about other cultures, history, religious beliefs, and etc. When it is possible, we will try to speak to people who have lived through what we are currently teaching about, which will allow us to a little more insight.